Well, good afternoon. It's Arlo Johnson in Vernon, British Columbia on the 10th of June, about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It's a warm day today. So I'd like to discuss the idea of nature. And I think, we overlook nature. As we're growing up, we see something, oh, there it looks nice there, and what's that? Oh, isn't that a wonderful thing there? But that's all. We kind of just gloss over it. Actually, nature is the handiwork of God Almighty, or Jesus, as Creator. Now, to look at nature and try to figure out how that all works is just amazing. I've talked about water, plain water, how amazing water is, what kind of a substance that is, and how God could use 70% of that to make a human being to wander around here on the earth. And I've been on it now for 90 years. The body has been sloshing around for 90 years, fixing itself and healing itself from all kinds of things. It's a vehicle, it really is just a vehicle for people to navigate around up this planet, to work, to build things, to, the thing is, I don't like when I hear people say, it's my body and I can do whatever I want with it. No, that's not true. And you can look at that any way you like. It's a not true deal. It's BS. You didn't create anything. Your life was given to you. Your spirit was given to you. Your body was given to you. And it's given to you for a purpose. The purpose I realized when I was about 15 years old. I remember standing out in the yard one time. I forget what I was doing, but I was just standing out there, and all of a sudden this thought came over me that, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And I'm standing out there kind of looking around at things, and all of a sudden I said to myself, I realized that I was here to make a decision about God and about life and about what to believe. I knew that at 15 years old. I remember that very plainly. You think out of a whole 90 years that you'd remember this, that, and whatever, but I remember that very plainly. And the thing is, the reasons to believe things is, or it should be, by example or by, truth or whatever. You see how this works, how that works, how did that get here, how did that work? And then you say to yourself, well, God must have created it, and here He's created this wonderful thing, and for us to use. And I remember I grew up on a farm in Alberta, and I think that was a good place to grow up. I had two very wonderful parents. I could never have found a mother and a father more dedicated to my benefit, it seems like, than ever. I could have never. They treated me so good. Never once did my dad ever say anything to me like in anger or anything else like that, or you should do this and you quit doing that. No, nothing. Never nothing. Sometimes he'd just sit and look at me, and I'd get very uneasy. And I thought, why are you just looking at me like that? And they treated me, way beyond what I expected or deserved. And, it's a pretty nice thing when somebody does that, I guess. But I realized later on that I could never have had two people more dedicated to my well-being than those two. They were very good to me. And they weren't fancy people, nothing, just farmers. And Dad wasn't a big man really, but he was like broad, wide. He had wide shoulders. And he had biceps 21.5 inches. I'll never forget that. Laying on the floor listening to the Joe Louis heavyweight boxing champions of the world going on, and they're giving the specs and the size of the fighters. And they got down to Joe Louis and they said, well, Joe Louis has 21.5 inch biceps. So we got all excited and we went and got a tape measure, and we measured Dad's biceps because he was laying there listening to the fight too. He liked listening to that. His biceps were 21.5. He was a big, strong guy. And boy, we were pretty excited about that. Dad's biceps are as big as Joe Louis, world champion. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Well, those days are really gone. It's sad, but those days are really gone. Those were days of, I'd say, innocence, and we didn't. Well, I remember when we didn't have electric power. We didn't have any electric power and Mom cooked everything on a wood stove and cooked everything fresh and new every day because we didn't have a fridge. And it was good. It was, I remember coming home from school and running in the door about 3:30, 3:45, and she'd have simple things on there like sometimes it would be a plate with a loaf of fresh white bread on it, and then covered with sour cream and strawberries. And oh man, we thought that was good. And, that's all it was, but we really liked that. Yeah, when you get to be my age, you start to, reminisce about things, eh? And you think about the history and what goes on. Sometimes I just think about, like for instance, my dad gave me a horse when I was 6 years old. That horse lived 27 years. He was a 3/4 size horse. He wasn't a big horse. He was part something, I don't know what, but he was a stubborn thing, but he was, he was good. He could run like the dickens. And I was going to school in this school called Armina. It was about 2.5 miles from where we were living. And these other boys in my class had Hamiltonians. Those are race horses. Their dad had bought them Hamiltonian ponies, horses. Well, they weren't just ponies, they were race horses. And we'd both go down the road 1/2 mile to the north and then 1/2 mile straight west. And then we'd turn off, I'd turn off. Well, when we got to the corner of the road that went 1/2 mile straight west, that was the racetrack, 1/2 mile racetrack. And of course they'd just look at each other, look at me, and they'd kick the ribs of their horses, and they'd start riding as fast as they could. And I was on Tony, my horse, and I just basically just let him run, and he'd lay his ears right back on his head, and he'd run, and he'd get to the half mile before them every time, and just stop dead there and head north at a slow rate. And they used to just hate that they couldn't beat him. And here he was, a smaller horse and whatever, but he just wouldn't let them beat him. Period. Yeah, that was an eye opener for me. How that smaller horse could be so determined. Yeah, I remember riding down the railroad track with my sister behind me, and I had kind of 1 inch nails in my heels so I could use them as like spurs. And I was riding full gallop down the railroad track. Now, when I think about that, I think, what a stupid thing to do. If he had stumbled and we'd flown off, we'd have hit a rail or something, we could have killed ourselves. I didn't do it too many times, I don't think. So that was stupid. Stupid thing to do. But, in a person's lifetime, if you were to count up the stupid things that a person does, you could write about 10 books. It really takes a long time to get any semblance of wisdom. Don't do this or that'll happen. Yeah, I remember going to town 6 miles in the winter with a team of horses in a bobsleigh, like a full box on sleigh lid, whatever, and full of hay and grain and stuff like that, and a seat up in the front where Dad would sit there with his big buffalo coat on. In the wintertime, we'd go into town. It would take like 2.5 hours for the horses to go the 6 miles. And we had all the hay in there and everything. And we'd go like, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, leave at 8. Get to town maybe about 10:30. And when we got to town, there was a big area, like a parking lot for horses and horses and sleighs and full boxes. And I can't remember offhand, but I know there would have been about 30 different teams of horses in this parking lot thing. It had a wall built around it, and people would pull in, tie up their horses, get their hay out, put it out for the horses, because, we're going to be there a couple of hours. And all our kids, we were like 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 maybe. Oh, we were all chasing each other around, playing games and doing stuff. And later on, I guess we'd be in the restaurant or get something to eat there. It was a day going to town. And we'd get groceries and stuff like that, and we'd get them right just before we went home, and we'd put them in the bobsleigh, and then pile all kinds of hay and straw around it to hopefully keep it from freezing till we got home. And of course it took another 2.5 hours of plodding along, and we'd run behind the sleigh, or we'd hang on to it, or get bored and come in and lay in the hay and then get up and run again. And yeah, get home, get the groceries in the house as soon as possible as they were starting to freeze. But a totally different way of life. Totally. And the difference, the big difference was, well, when we got power, things changed like big time. Not Calgary Power, Farm Electric came around and they just went mile after mile after mile with power line, and then into the yard. And I don't know if they brought it right up to the house, but I think they maybe did. And then we had to get somebody to wire the house, and everything was wired on the outside, you know, it wasn't inside. Wires running around the walls all over the place. And then we got lights, no heat or anything, but lights. And we still used the wood stove, but we had a fridge. We got a fridge, the first fridge we ever had. And that changed a whole lot of things for Mum. Oh, all kinds of things. She could save things for the next day, and she didn't have to. Well, she baked bread every day. Every day. Fresh bread would be on the table by noon, and you know, I often wondered about that. I remember we had like half a beef hanging in a granary, especially in the fall, winter time, you know, just hung there. We'd go out and chop a big chunk off and bring it in and roast it, cook it, do whatever, and it, you know, was pretty, you know, it was fresh. And that went on all winter. Now the thing is, when you grow up like that, you know, it's a different thing. When I was growing up, family was everything. It was totally everything. We had a big family, and there was families all around us. Some of them are relations, and others were a little farther away. But either, like on the weekends for sure, we went to their place on the weekend, and picnic party kind of thing all the time. They come to our place, picnic party thing, all kinds of cousins and stuff around. And that went on all the time. Every single weekend. We never went anywhere. We didn't go anywhere to see anything else. We went, hung around with our relations, cousins, aunts, uncles. We'd go to the lake. A bunch of us would go to the lake, have a big picnic, spend the day there, come home at 5, 6 o'clock at night. There's one uncle that had a BA bulk station dealership, and he had this flatbed, I think 1-ton truck, and you know, he'd haul barrels of gas on it. But he'd come around with that on, you know, like Saturday morning early, and we'd all pile on it, just pile on it, pile on the truck at the back, and away we'd go. And you know, it could be quite a few of us on a flat deck. And I don't think it had any sides on it either. But we didn't worry about that. Nobody fell off. He didn't go very fast either. He went, you know, pretty reasonable speed. And you know, I remember coming back from the lake. We lived 3 miles south of the Miquelon Lake, which was a provincial park deal. And we're coming home this one afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon, or was it Sunday, I'm not sure, about 3 o'clock. And my mother and her sister decided they should stop. They thought they saw a bunch of, I don't know what kind of berries it was or something, but they got Alvin to stop along the side of the road, kind of on a corner, and pull off. And they grabbed these buckets, and away they went, right through this fence and in these guys' property, and they whispering, you know, I hope they don't think, you know, we shouldn't really be in here, and me and my cousin Norman watched them go in there, we got off and we went around where they couldn't see us, went through the bush and crawled in behind some big trees, and we watched and we listened to them. They were squeaking through these fences with their dresses and stuff, and they said, "Oh, look here. Oh, here's a whole bunch here. Oh, man, this is good, isn't it?" And we took a little rock or something, and we'd throw it, and it would land somewhere just past them. And they'd say, "What was that? What was that?" And then we'd wait a little while, and they'd look around, they couldn't see anything, they started picking again. We'd throw another rock. "Oh, they know we're here. We've got to get out of here. Oh, oh." And they started running with their pails, buckets of berries, spilling them and running, and going through the fence too fast. The barbed wire fence was catching their dresses, ripping them, and Norman and me run around the outside, got back on the truck, and were sitting, waiting for them. And they come rushing in, and they said, "We got to get out of here. They know we're here." And Norman and I just sat, and we couldn't, we had a very hard time keeping our mouth, keeping from laughing out loud. And they didn't know it. That lasted for quite a while. Oh, that was fun. The business of families and family life, family farm life. You know, I didn't realize it growing up on a farm, but we had to rely on that farm. In our case, we had two sections, 320 acres. A lot of people just had 160. And they were raising a family and building houses, barns, blah, 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 and all kinds of stuff. And anyway, we had to produce every single stick of everything from that farm. Whether it was grain, hogs, chickens, eggs, milk, selling pigs, or selling cattle in the fall, grain, we'd sell some grain, but most of it, we'd keep half of it for feed. And it all went on all year long. Certain times you'd sell something and you'd get enough money to do something. You get a few $100s. At that time, that was, basically all you'd get. You could sell 10 pigs and maybe make $150 on the whole works. But what I'm getting at, there was no pension, there was no workman's thing or any kind of government supplement or help. None. None at all. Whether it was for health or anything, you went to town, you paid the doctor. Cash right there when you were there. And the doctor seems to be doing fine, and he didn't charge that much, maybe it was $15 or $20 to stitch up a finger or do this or get something for a bad cold. And the thing is, we had to be an economic unit absolutely on our own. We had to figure out how to do that too. Now, there was lots of times they said, boys that grew up on a farm like that in Alberta or Saskatchewan, they were way better equipped to work in a place where you had to, use your head and figure things out, and way better than people living in a city and just living in a home apartment. And I think that's true. Well, I remember having to figure out how to, I'd get stuck or the tractor would get something wrong, and I had to fix it out in the field on my own, get it going again. and you had to rely on yourself. You had to figure things out, and that made it. It was like a school of hard knocks. There's no doubt about that. That's gone. Yeah, the farms nowadays are so mechanized and everything. It's a different story, but it's still got its reliance workshop experience. You still have to get things working and going, and guessing about the weather and whether we can do it now or wait tomorrow, or get rained out, hailed out, all kinds of things. Yeah, I remember having to get up in the morning and go and milk cows before I went to school. Yeah, just had to do it. I don't think they do that anymore. I should mention, I did well in school for whatever reason. I don't know why. I was always, in those days you'd get an A. If you were really good, you got an H for honors, B, C, whatever. I never had anything less than A's and B's and H's. And in fact, last year I was in school, I got most half H's and half A's. And I think that was grade 9. And last year I actually went to school. And I remember the superintendent of schools for the Camrose district, the largest district, came out in July, I think middle of July or something, came out to the farm and wanted to see me, and I guess Dad told him, well, he's raking hay actually right now out on the farm. You can drive right through. There's a kind of a road you can take. So here he comes driving across the fields in this big blue sedan. And I thought, now, who is coming out here? And I remember sitting on this rake with this team of horses and looking at him. And he pulls up and gets out and he says, hi, my name is Mr. Robinson. I'm superintendent of schools for school district number 22. Oh, is that all right? What do you want? He said, I've come out here to talk to you about going to university. And I thought, I don't know. He said, with your marks and your stuff that you had, we've looked at your records. We really suggest strongly that you keep going to school and get into university. And I thought, oh my God. I'm still sitting on this rake looking at him. And he said, Arlo, if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. And let's hope we'll see you this fall. Goodbye. Goodbye. And he goes, and I'm sitting there watching him go, and dust flying up in the field, and there he goes and disappears. And I'm sitting there, and like a big dummy, I'm thinking to myself, if I'm that smart, I don't need to go to school anymore. And I thought, oh man, I thought later, you idiot. I did take some courses later on in Mount Royal College in Red Deer. And it was a business administration course, and the whole thing was Mount Royal College was a hands-on deal. You had to come up with a project that you could actually build or start, and you had to be able to run it. When your course was through, you had to give a full report on everything, how you were going to do everything. And I had looked at dry cleaning plants in Rocky Mountain House because there wasn't any. And, Rocky Mountain House was getting to be a good-sized town. And I went through everything, buying this and the cost of this and how I'm going to do everything, where I'm going to get the money from. And other guys, there was two or three of them went together on a project to build a big hotel. And they did. They built a big hotel. And others had other projects. And I got an A plus in my course. And I did. I started small with a little unit in a in a furniture store, and I had hired a woman to run it. And people would bring their dry cleaning in and run it through this automatic machine, but that didn't work out very good. So I got a hold of McGraw Edison in the United States, and they had a deal. They were promoting a thing called 1 hour Martinizing. That was their whole deal. That was 1 hour Martinizing. You take it in, and 1 hour later you can get it back. And that was their deal. And they had a handbook about this thick, and their deal was you buy the equipment from us, we'll finance it for you, and you'll have to put it in though, install it, and you'll need 1,500 to 2,000 square feet for sure. And so I thought about it, and I did. I signed up for it. Big truck came with all these big machines and boilers and everything. And I ended up with a full plant in Rocky Mountain House. Now, the boys that I hung around with, two of them were plumbers and one was a car dealer. They saw that this 1 hour Martinizing was a pretty good deal. I was making money. It said exactly what size sign to have, and do this, do that. They even guaranteed that if you followed their book, if there's more than one dry cleaning plant in the town, it will go broke and you will survive. And that's happened. We went to Calgary and we signed up with with an outfit called blah, blah, blah. Yeah, my memory going to hell again. CNR, anyway. No, CP. CP had railroad stations in every town. Downtown. They were phasing them out. But they had that land right downtown. And they were converting this into shopping centers. Downtown shopping centers. So we went to Calgary and we went up in this big building, and which was CN, it was their company, and I think me and this other guy, Clayton Kennedy, who was a car dealer, we went there to negotiate. We wanted to negotiate for a business spot, a commercial business spot in Camrose and one in Stettler. Two different. Camrose, much bigger town. Anyway, they were right down at the end of Main Street. If you were on Main Street and looked right down, you'd look at our sign, 4x20, 1 hour Martinizing. In Camrose, if you look down the Main Street, you'd see our sign right dead in the middle of the street, because the buildings went crossways to the end of the street. The railroad went that way. And we went up in this big building, and these people were very, nice to, oh, hello, come on in. Yes, could we get you anything to drink? And would you like coffee? And I said, well, I guess we could have coffee. That's not what we came for, though. We want to talk to somebody about leasing in Stettler and in Camrose, in your new shopping centers. Oh, well, let's just talk about it. We'll go in this office here. And we're sitting there talking away. They had a map out of the building and, on the wall, and showing all the different spots in the building and how soon they're going to be ready. And they're working on them now. And Oh yeah. And we went up and we said, we like this one right here in Stettler, and we like that one right there in Camrose. Oh yes, that's a good choice, you know. Yeah. And I said, how much is that going to be? How much are you going to be renting for? And they said, well, that's going to be, you know, so much a square foot or whatever. And I said, what does that come to? Well, for Stettler, I think it's $265 a month. And I said, yeah. And what called Camrose? Well, that's a little bit bigger, and it's, you know, bigger town and everything. So that'll be about 350 bucks rent for those deals. I said, I see. And I just looked at Clayton and I said, you know what? Do you have a check with you? And he feels around. He says, yeah, yeah, I do. I do have one. Well, I said, let's leave them a check for, I don't know, $500 or $600 total. And we'll just put on the Camrose and this much, and Stettler this much for unit number 22 and unit number 8. And we give him this check, and the guy says, well, I don't know. I don't think I can actually take checks right now. I mean, this is a little early yet, you know. Oh, no, I said, that's fine. You got checks there, you go ahead. And I said, also, I said, we will want 10 years at a fixed price at this price with the option, our option, to extend it for another 20 years at the same price. Oh, I see. Well, I said, remember now, 10 years plus 10-year option at our choice. Went back, never heard anything. About a month later, I got this big envelope, heavy envelope, and 2 big copies of leases, black covered deals, fancy thing. Open it up, oh man, it's about 40 pages long each one. And I looked at it, and I said, oh. I was the president of this company that we formed, Plaza Cleaners. So I had to sign it and send it back, and I did. I just signed it. President, Plaza Cleaners, blah, 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 blah. Kept one copy, and I sent the other one back to Calgary. Well, we started, when we got going, we went to Stettler first, put that plant in, got it going, hired a manager in Stettler who had been running elevators, grain elevators, fairly young guy. And we told him, you go ahead and run this, it's your baby to run, and we'll do profit sharing with you. Oh, okay, that's better than a grain elevator, blah, blah, blah. And he got in there, and he was running that thing, you know, like he was in the Chamber of Commerce thing, and he was this, he was promoting everything, doing real good. We went to Camrose, got that in, and got it running, hired another manager there, and he was not quite as good, but he was pretty good, and had them both running. And I had my own. And anyway, hello.
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy.